as a financial advisor, it's really important to me that I share both the pros and the cons of any decision that I'm helping my clients with. And I've talked a lot about the benefits of retiring early, but I think it's also good to talk about what are the worst things about retiring? What makes it hard to retire? And in today's video, I'm going to share those with you. And at the end, I'm going to share with you some tools, some techniques, some information that you can use to make that transition easier for you so you can have a great retirement. Okay, the first one is retirement can be lonely. As we get older, we tend to spend more and more time by ourselves. And oftentimes, some of our most social aspects of our day is at work, right? If we're married, we've probably been married for a long time. Our spouse knows all of our silly stories. So even when we get home, we may not be that talkative. So oftentimes, the most social part of our day is during work. And when we cut that out, that can be difficult. So retiring can be lonely. It doesn't have to be, but it can be lonely. So it's important to watch out for that and to be thinking about, how do I get friends outside of work during the journey before I'm 50, 55, 60, 65, and thinking about retiring. So do that earlier rather than later. And the other thing is just invest the time. If you have old friends that you haven't talked to in a while, reach out to them. I'm sure that they'd love to hear from you. And invest the time. Spend some time reconnecting. And if there's somebody that maybe, for whatever reason there was a fallout in the past, and if you look back and say, you know what, that was kind of a silly reason, well, life is short, right? And so every relationship that we have is important, and think about, is there a way to rekindle that relationship? Now, some we buried for a reason, and it's best to keep that relationship buried. But if it's something silly, somebody said something that offended the other person, is there something you could do to get past that? So that's the next thing. Okay, the next item outside of feeling maybe a little bit lonely is just this feeling of loss, right? When you're working, you have a shared purpose with your teammates at work. You have a routine. You're part of a team. You're working collaboratively with other people, and it's natural to feel a loss for that, kind of a yearning for that. Even though everything has its pros and cons, and when we were working, there was a lot of stress involved in that, and then there was the commute and not having enough time in the day. But we can feel this sense of loss. And so what do you do if you're feeling that sense of loss, or you're thinking, I'm not sure I want to retire early because I think I will feel that sense of loss? Well, plan ahead of time and think about what could you retire to, as opposed to retiring away from some of the negatives of our work life. And along the journey, so if you're in your 40s or your 50s, are there some ways you can be spending your time now so that when it does come time to retire, you have these passions, you have these hobbies outside of work, these other things that you enjoy doing, that you want to do, that'll give you something you enjoy doing, but more importantly, a sense of purpose. It'll give you a reason. It puts a skip in your step and causes you to whistle when you think about that, whether it's, volunteer coaching at the local high school, or being involved in a local non-for-profit, or if it's Habitat for Humanity. I've never done many chores around the house, many home improvement projects. I would certainly rather learn from somebody that knows what they're doing than do it on my own for the first time. So whatever it is that gets you excited, think about that. And again, I'm going to share with you some resources here at the end. But as we get older, the nice thing is studies show that happiness tends to continue to increase. It tends to bottom out, frankly, and it surprises me. People's happiness tends to bottom out when they have young kids at home. And I know I was exhausted when I had young kids at home, but I also felt like I was swimming in love whenever I came home. So I don't know if I was happy, but I was very, very content. I felt this strong feeling of purpose and meaning in my life. But what it shows is that phase is, because it's so busy and it's so chaotic, that phase of our lives, and we have mortgage payments and we're still saving for retirement and we're likely trying to save money to help our kids pay for college. There's a lot of responsibilities on our shoulders. So that phase of life tends to be a phase where we have a lower level of happiness. And then it starts to go up. And one of the places it starts is when you're in your early 20s and you don't have many responsibilities. Your happiness is there. More responsibilities, it goes down. But then it starts going back up again. And it doesn't stop going back up until we reach about 70, 75 years old. And what usually triggers that leveling off of the happiness is just, unfortunately, people come up with health issues. You know, it's unfortunate, but many of us are going to lose our health a lot sooner than what we think we're going to lose our health. You know, if you're in your 40s, 50s, or 60s, and you're in good health now, it's just natural to think, you know, I'm going to be healthy until I'm 80, until I'm 90. I'm going to be that outlier. But the reality is few of us are going to be that outlier. The World Health Organization has done a study, and according to them, the average American, our healthy lifespan, the age at which we end up with a serious medical condition, something like a cancer diagnosis or heart disease, something like that, the average age of that is 67.1 years. So it's just 13 months after most Americans retire. And that's not much time, which is, even though the transition into retirement can be challenging, I still think it's worth thinking about if you can financially afford to retire early. And the reason is, at some point, we all have to go through this transition. Unless we're going to work until the day that we die, right? At some point, we have to go through the transition into retirement. So why not do that when you're in the youth of your senior years, in your 50s or early 60s, as opposed to when you're very close to having a health issue? So why not take advantage of that youth of your senior years? So two things. One, the World Health Organization tells us we're going to lose our health sooner than what we think. And the other thing is, even if we have a healthy lifespan till 80, that's only 1,000 weeks after the age of 60. That's not a whole lot of time. So if you can afford to retire a year before you're 60, or 2 years, or 3 years, or at 64 instead of 65, I encourage you to give some thought to it. And as to these negatives, as to the difficult transition, there's two books that I have found have been super helpful for people. The first one has a title that kind of throws people off, but it's a much deeper book and a much broader book than what the title lead says, which is Die with Zero by Bill Perkins. But he really talks about how to use your money when you're at a stage in your life when we can actually enjoy it. So that's the first book, Die with Zero by Bill Perkins. The second book is From Strength to Strength by Arthur Brooks. And Arthur Brooks talks about these different stages we go through in our life, including retirement, and what we can do to prepare ahead of time for these transitions so they'll be as successful as possible. And if this video has been helpful, I know you'll enjoy this video here, which talks about enjoying the journey until we get to retire. Things to stop doing, 7 things to stop doing in our 50s and 60s in order to enjoy our time more. Thanks for watching this one. I'll see you in the next one.